Land's Wrath. It's a pretty good deck right out of the box, but I think that there are 10 cards that we could swap out for under $20 to make it much more competitive. Let's take a look at the Zendikar Rising pre-constructed deck Land's Wrath featuring Obuun, Mul Daya Ancestor, and the video starts right now. Special thanks to our Patreon supporters who power our channel. Check out our Patreon for monthly giveaways, exclusive content, and even a starring role in our fan fight series. Link in the description below. Hello and welcome to the day. Thank you for spending your time with us. Welcome back to another episode of Jake and Joel Are Magic. I am Joel. We're going to talk about Land's Wrath and the 10 cards that I would swap out for under $20. But before we do, if you would, go down there, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. It really helps us out. Let's take a look at this commander. So we've got Obuun, Mul Daya Ancestor, 4 mana in Naya colors for a 3/3 elf spirit. At the beginning of combat on your turn, a target land you control is going to become an XX elemental creature with trample and haste, where X is Obuun's power. It's still a land. And with landfall, whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you can put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. The basic strategy with this commander, as written, is to put the +1/+1 counters on Obuun, grow his power, and then at the beginning of combat, turn one of your creatures into a land with trample and haste that can attack. So built into the box, we've got a landfall strategy represented by rampaging Baloths. Land coming into the battlefield is going to give us value, and we can lean further into that. We've also got this +1/+1 counter strategy. Our creatures become XX creatures, not lands with +1/+1 counters on them, but Obuun does get those counters if you choose to just grow his power and focus on creating elemental lands to attack. I like Inspiring Call in this deck, and I left it for that +1/+1 counter strategy because any creature with a +1/+1 counter on it is going to gain indestructible at instant speed for 3 mana, which is very good. So when we look at Obuun, we want to go with landfall cards. We want to go with cards that are going to grow his power so that we can have bigger lands attacking when that ability activates. The first card that I want to take out is Abzan Falconer. Each creature you control is going to get a +1/+1 counter on it because of this creature, but I just don't think that has enough impact. We don't necessarily want to be attacking with Obuun. I'm sure we can when the opportunity presents itself, but that's not our main focus because we don't need to do damage or attack with Obuun to activate the ability, just grow their power. So let's take Abzan Falconer out and let's put in Avenger of Zendikar. If we're going to build a landfall deck, this is like one of the best cards that you can run for this. Lands are entering the battlefield under your control. You're putting +1/+1 counters on the plants that you've created when Avenger of Zendikar entered the battlefield. This is just a house of a card, and at only $4, that's going to contribute to our $20 upgrade here in a big way. The next card that I want to take out is Tuskguard Captain. Each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has trample. Again, we're not attacking with Obuun, and our lands become XX creatures where X is Obuun's power, not lands with +1/+1 counters on them that are 0/0, if that makes sense. So the trample doesn't really matter that much to us, and it's kind of small beans, especially when we could run a $2 card in Felidar Retreat, 4 mana to create a 2/2 every time you landfall, or put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control and they gain vigilance. That's huge for us. Felidar Retreat at only $2 is so worth the value and much more valuable than Tuskguard Captain to us in this instance. Armorcraft Judge is the third card that I would look at removing. You're going to get to draw a card every time it enters the battlefield for each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it, and that's fine. But again, just naturally, we're only looking at Obuun. Obuun can spread the love around with the ability, but I just don't think that with this ability we want to be targeting creatures that only have +1/+1 counters on it. I think we'd be much more served by leaning even further into the landfall ability and spending $1 to acquire Phylath World Sculptor. It's a 6 mana. It does a similar effect to Avenger of Zendikar, where a 0/1 plant is going to be created every time it enters the battlefield. And with the landfall ability, you're getting 4 +1/+1 counters on a target plant you control. So it's just more synergy with the landfall strategy. Now, we look at a card like Scare Tiller and we understand it, right? When it becomes tapped, you can put a land from your hand onto the battlefield so you can get multiple land drops in a given turn, or you can return a land from the graveyard to the battlefield tap. So again, more lands entering, and that's pretty good for landfall. But at 4 mana, the creature doesn't have a built-in way to tap other than attacking, and so a lot of times you might not even have an opening to attack into to tap Scare Tiller and consistently get value. Make sure that you can get value off of this creature. So let's swap that out for Embodiment of Fury. Land creatures you control have trample. trample. Now, they've already been granted trample with Obuun's ability, but that's just for the land creature that he creates at the beginning of combat on your turn. When landfall happens and triggers for Embodiment of Fury, you get a target land to become a 3/3 with haste that then can have other powers bestowed upon it. Having trample as well is going to help us get damage across. I really like the synergy that this presents. If you run any of the man lands that would fit in the colors for this, this is also a very good effect for them to have. With the landfall ability on Embodiment of Fury, you get a land to become a 3/3 creature with haste that can attack, and you can keep coming at them from multiple angles. Plus, if you run any man lands in your deck, those are also going to gain trample from Embodiment of Fury's effect. So I like it, especially at 50 cents. It's an easy card to acquire. We can replace Scare Tiller for very cheap and get an ability that's going to be very synergistic for us. Elite Scale Guard is more of this +1/+1 strategy, but I just didn't like how this was presented. Again, the creatures that we're creating our lands out of with Obuun's ability are not getting +1/+1 counters on them. It would be a completely different story if they did. It's just Obuun that we probably want to be putting those +1/+1 counters on. Whenever a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it attacks, tap target creature defending player controls. That's very good in the right build, but I just don't think we're going to be going super wide with the +1/+1 counters, whereas we just want to grow Obuun's power. So with Elite Scale Guard, I think we should swap it out for Karametra and lean heavier again into the landfall abilities. Whenever you cast a creature spell, you can search your library for a forest or plains card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle your library straight up. We get additional landfall triggers through that ability. Karametra is only $2 to acquire and indestructible, so I definitely think that it's got a home in this deck. Sandstone Oracle is a card I just don't like outright. When it enters the battlefield, you choose an opponent. If that player has more cards in hand than you, draw cards equal to the difference. At 7 mana, I just don't think that I want to maybe be drawing some cards. I want to guarantee what I'm drawing if I want to go with a draw spell in that. But I feel like we can swap this artifact out for a better artifact in Swiftfoot Boots for only $2. Protecting Obuun is paramount in this deck, and the box itself doesn't come with any of the hexproof equipment that you can put into this deck. So for $2, picking up Swiftfoot Boots and replacing that Sandstone Oracle that really just is not good in my opinion will be a huge factor for your Obuun staying alive, creating big lands as we grow his power. Also, Struggle to Survive. Again, I get the point here. Struggle deals damage to target creature equal to the number of lands you control at instant speed. That's actually pretty good removal. And then an Aftermath, each player shuffles their graveyard into their library. That's fine. It's an okay effect. We'll take it. But with just a target creature being dealt damage equal to the number of lands, I wish that that said any target and I wouldn't have cut this card. I just want my removal or my direct damage removal to be a little more versatile, and I can put it on somebody's face if I need to just get a little damage across. So again, I think we should just swap out. Go ahead and spend $4, get yourself a copy of Lightning Greaves, put it in there for Struggle to Survive, and it's going to give you the opportunity for Obuun to get Haste and Shroud so that it can't be the target of any spells or abilities and get removed. At that point, you're just worried about board wipe. So that's definitely $4 worth spending to protect your commander. Retreat to Kazandu is in this deck. On landfall triggers, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. This is very, very good. You may want to even consider finding another card in this deck that you don't personally like to swap out for what I'm going to suggest you swap out Retreat to Kazandu for. I just know that this card pretty much exists because you gain 2 life. That's inconsequential. We don't care about that. But the +1/+1 counter to go on to Obuun to grow the power, that can be very good. However, for just $1, we can do it with Sunforger, and for just the 3 mana to cast and 3 mana to equip, we'll get +4 immediately. That's not even to talk about Sunforger's ability to pay 2, unattach it, and search for a red or white instant with CMC 4 or less, and then cast it without paying its mana cost from your library. So with Sunforger, Naya Charm is already in this deck. It has the ability to deal 3 to a creature, return a card from your graveyard to your hand, or tap all creatures target player controls for a win condition so that we can swing through and unblocked with all of our creatures and win that way. As a bonus to this video, I also think that you should probably swap Naya Charm out for Boros Charm eventually. Boros Charm is $2, and I was right at the line for my $20 upgrade on this one. So that's a future upgrade, Naya Charm into Boros Charm, just because permanents you control gain indestructible until end of turn. I already said we're only worried about board wipes with the boots being on our commander, so Boros Charm gets us around that. But overall, Retreat to Kazandu into Sunforger, I think, is a swap that you're going to be very happy with in the long run. Crush Contraband, here's another card that's pretty good that I'm swapping out for something that I just consider better. For 4 mana, you can either exile an artifact, exile an enchantment, or exile both an artifact and an enchantment. Really good. Instant speed, 4 mana, solid. However, let's go with Austere Command. It's only a $2 card. It's 2 more mana, but you can either destroy all artifacts, destroy all enchantments, destroy all creatures with CMC 3 or less, or destroy all creatures with CMC 4 or greater. So it's very versatile, and that's what I like about this card, is the versatility. It does what Contraband does, but just a little bit better. Granted, it doesn't exile, and so if you've got some kind of recursion deck across the battlefield from you, that's going to be a little bit of a problem. But the ability just to wipe all the artifacts, wipe all the enchantments, or wipe all the creatures is very strong, especially for just $2. The last card I want to talk about is Ground Assault. Again, this is at sorcery speed. This is that damage to a creature equal the number of lands you control. It's fine. I don't hate it. I like the synergy in the deck, but I think that there's better things that we can do with our card slots. We've already talked about growing Obuun's power. We can pick up a copy of Black Blade Reforged for $1, and this is going to grow Obuun's power in a way that is synergistic with the rest of the deck. Equipped creatures getting +1/+1 for each land you control, and it equips to Obuun for just 3 after casting it for 2. For only $1, this is a great way to grow Obuun's power to a huge level so that the creatures that he's turning the lands into on the combat step are just enormous and very hard for your opponents to deal with. As with all these videos, I want to suggest a few cards that are going to be higher cost than the budget was for our upgrade video purposes here, but should be on your radar. And I want to start with Ashaya, Soul of the Wild. Ashaya's power and toughness are equal to the number of lands you control, so it can already be an enormous creature. But the big part of this is that non-token creatures you control are forest lands in addition to their other types, meaning that whenever you play a creature, it's going to count as landfall because that is a forest land. Also, in addition to being a creature whatever, when you play it, it's going to trigger your landfall abilities. Ashaya is absolutely nuts. It's a $7 card, and you should definitely look into it. Another great card for this deck is Ancient Green Warden. At 6 mana, it's got reach on 5/7, so it's a big old chunky creature. You can play lands from your graveyard if anything dies, or if you're sack lands or anything like that, sack it to go search something up. You can play those and reactivate those abilities to get more lands out of your deck. And if lands entering the battlefield cause a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time, so we get double landfall triggers with Ancient Green Warden on the battlefield, and that's just enormous. You can already see where the value of that could take you. This is a $12 card, and so it should be on your soon radar to acquire for a very powerful landfall card. That's how I would upgrade Obuun. Let's close the book. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know what cards you have put into your Obuun deck that are overperforming. I want to talk to you about it down below. Hit that like and subscribe button on your way out if you liked the video. Hit that dislike button if you didn't. Other than that, I'm tapped out, and I'll catch you later.